How do I start this conversation? I keep trying to prepare myself to have this conversation or just to speak the words out loud. So here we go. Okay, so I got in a little bit more of a comfortable spot. I made a cup of coffee in my birthday mug. Super cute. It's like a handcrafted mug. I don't know if anybody's really familiar with Sedona, but it's at this spot. I think it's called The Pot. The Spot or The Pot. Something like that. But it's a nice breakfast place we like to stop at when we go there. So we stopped there on my birthday and I ended up liking this mug. So I picked it up. Okay, so and also kind of changed it to pajamas. Wanted to feel a little bit more cozy and I don't know, set a relaxing tone for this video. So the purpose of this video is to kind of one, for me to kind of talk about this and get more familiar with it and hopefully talk a lot more about it on my channel. So just kind of document my experience in my life and whatever. More for me, but also in case anyone out there is like me and is getting this new diagnosis and doesn't know, up from down in terms of it. Because let's be real, we're not aware of things until we're aware of things. So I've been having, I guess I just start off diagnosis. So I got diagnosed with POI, which is primary ovarian insufficiency, or I think it also can be known as primary. It's essentially what it is. It's the loss of the function of your ovaries. My ovaries are not doing what they're supposed to. So I'm not producing follicles because I'm not producing hormones to stimulate that. So I'm 35, and in my 35 years, I was married for a good chunk of that. In my marriage, my husband and I tried to have kids. We were unsuccessful, but my relationship kind of obviously towards the end, it was heading towards the end. So having kids as we matured and started to kind of grow apart, it wasn't really a high priority because we both felt that sense of drifting apart. We wanted to work on our marriage before we further pursued having kids. But was with my ex husband in my 20s, and all that time we tried to have a baby, was never successful. Something or another kept happening to why I wasn't addressing the issue. I think I addressed it a handful of times with my doctors, and I was often met with try for another year. If you don't have a baby in a year, then come back. But by all those points, it had been a few years. I think it was 3 years. But each time I tried to readdress it, it was more of try again, try this. And it was it kind of, looking back on it now, kind of upset me. And maybe it was because I was so young and naive and I didn't have, maybe I just didn't have the security or confidence to kind of say, hey, no, something is going on, I need more testing. Or maybe they didn't take me seriously because I was young. But I wish I would have been more aggressive in terms of what I wanted in my health and my health care, and being more of an advocate for myself. Not that I'm saying that those doctors were negligent or anything, but I put my trust in them and their knowledge, and I should have just spoken up more for myself. So now here I am in my 30s, mid 30s. I have not had any kids. I have not had any pregnancies. I haven't had any pregnancy scares. In 2015, I went through a period of, first of all, I'll stop right here. If you're immature and you can't handle words like period and blood and menstruation, if you can't handle that, just click away. This is like a mature adult place. So I don't like any negative feedback, or if you just can't handle it, that's fine. Just, this isn't for you. So in 2015, I had a period that lasted, I think, like 15 to 16 days. It was 2 weeks. And once I hit the 2 week mark and I still kept bleeding, is when I got scared. So, because like I know, like periods vary. And so, but this period, I was like bleeding so heavy. I was passing like clots, like the size of silver dollars. For those of you that are older that know what a silver dollar is, they were like, or have seen them in person, they were huge clots. And I was going through like a pad every like 2 or 3 hours. There was just so much bleeding. And so prior to that, my periods were kind of really light. I had heavy clots, but they were light. So my brain, I was like, well, maybe it's finally cleaning itself all the way out. I don't know. I self-justified. So coming up on the 2 weeks, like I was getting really weak. I lived on the 3rd story of my apartment, and I couldn't walk up and down the stairs because I was just getting lightheaded and windy. I hadn't worked because at that time I only worked weekends, like full-time weekends, but like 16-hour shifts. So I was off for 2 weeks. Like I didn't go in the weekend I was scheduled. I was on the couch. I was miserable. So I made an appointment, went to the doctor because my mom at this point suggested like I check if I was maybe having a miscarriage. And so I went to my doctor. She didn't suspect because they did a pregnancy test in the office. It was negative. She wasn't sure what was going on. So I asked for a blood pregnancy test because maybe the hormones in the blood would show something different. So she ran those, and she also recommended me to have a pelvic ultrasound. So she did that just to kind of see what is going on. So while they were scheduling my pelvic ultrasound, I was waiting for them to call me. So they call me and they tell me like my insurance is invalid. So I was like, that's impossible. My insurance is always valid. I've always insured. I'm a mature adult. I always have insurance. It's not something I ever not had. Like I always have insurance. And so they were like, well, check with your employer. We're trying to verify maybe the information's incorrect. So I checked with my employer, and it turned out that, because I think this was like in May or July, maybe June. So it turned out that when I signed up for my insurance, I actually didn't select an insurance or a coverage. I had just filled out the information, like my name, birthday, and all that, but I didn't select it. So my HR person was like, oh yeah, I thought it was odd that you didn't do that, but you don't have insurance. And so I was like devastated. I thought I was having a miscarriage. I was in crisis. I was so upset. And then my mom reminded me that I am Native American, so I have some Native American heritage, and that we have medical coverage. So, but you have to go to like the Native American specific places. So of course I went because I needed to address this. I mean, obviously I would have either way, but it's not ideal to have huge medical bills. So I went to the hospital. I ended up getting prescribed like medication to stop the bleeding, like, which was birth control. I think I took a month's worth of birth control in like 3 or 4 days to try to help stop it. I might be getting the numbers wrong, but I remember like I took like a month's worth in like a short period of time. And then had the ultrasound, and that's how I found out I had fibroids, like uterine fibroids. So then after that, I started talking to a doctor again about having a baby, having issues, and addressing that, like, are the fibroids the reason why I was never able to get pregnant? Because up until that point, I hadn't had an ultrasound done. And so he explained, like, really into detail, and was really helpful in the science of like getting pregnant, and that how your uterus has to be like an optimal like condition, meaning like uterine lining's not too thick, it's not too thin, like everything has to kind of line up in order for like a pregnancy to happen. And so he said, you should be able to still get pregnant even with uterine fibroids. And again, I got the go try for a few months, and come back, and then we start the testing process, and he's like, you know, testing your partner and so on and so forth. And so at that time my marriage was beginning to fail, and so I didn't feel any sort of urgency within myself to start addressing this again, because I was like, well, my marriage is failing, I'm not trying to have kids and bring a child up in like a broken marriage. Like, that's just not something I was interested in. So again, I backburnered it and didn't address it. So I went on, we were going through a separation, went on just kind of existing, you know. I ended up getting an IUD because that was recommended if I wasn't going to try to have kids. It was recommended for the management of the fibroids, the uterine fibroids. The biggest mistake. I will never get an IUD again. I lasted 1 year to like the month, had that sucker pulled out. I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. It did not work for me. I'll never do it again. Placing it was an awful experience. It's a story time for another day. Awful experience. We'll never do it again. But I lasted with it for a year, had it removed, and then I went on like the pill, like oral contraceptive. And that was again to help manage like the symptoms of the cramping, heavy periods, the clotting, like manage all of those symptoms, along with I was coming out of a marriage. I didn't want any kids. I was dating. I was basically just, you know, living my best life single. So fast forward a few months, I think maybe even a year. That birth control I was on, I don't remember the name of it, but I have to look it up actually. Maybe I'll like insert it. So that birth control I was on, I started experience, I think like a year into it, hair loss. So I had hair loss like straight down my like right on my crown. And actually one of my coworkers / friend, like, I met her through work, but I met her through another ex, but anyway, we were coworkers and we were also friends. So she had pointed it out, and so I just had like a little bit of light patch here, and it slowly got bigger and bigger, and I had a bald spot, a huge bald spot right in the center of my head. I was extremely insecure about it. I would have to like wear my hair like up in a bun or just up this way and strategically place my hair to cover it up. And it was just awful experience. It was very not emotionally traumatizing. I didn't feel like myself. I had a huge bald spot. I'm a girl. I was just really insecure about it. So I ended up switching birth control, and because that was like I was certain it was my birth control. So like with my body, I tend to get like heavily affected by things with it. And so I knew this was like the only thing new and different in my life, even though, sorry, video stopped recording. So it was the only thing new and different in my life. Didn't change my diet. My activity level hasn't changed. My shampoos haven't changed. Like nothing's changed except for introducing that birth control into my life. So I ended up going on Ocella, which was, that one I remember because I remember it worked well for me. So it was like specifically a low androgen level like birth control. And within the first month, and I mean the first month, I had like little hairs growing back. I was so ecstatic to have my little patch was like just filling in like nothing ever happened. Super excited. So then I stayed on that birth control for a few years. I want to say like 2 years. But then I decided I was coming to a point in my life. I'm now in a relationship that's been like, I think 4 years now. And I'm older. I didn't feel like I wanted to be on birth control anymore, or like I didn't want to put these like artificial hormones in my body anymore. Like I wanted to just kind of detox from that for a bit. And so like I did inform my partner, I decided to come off the birth control, and so came off. And then that's when I started experiencing like irregular menstruation, like irregular periods. Like I would go like, you know, not having a period for 2 months, and then having a period, and then it being too heavy or too light, and then it just randomly popping up, like these random spottings, and then it just be gone for like 3 months, which was really like frustrating. Just like as a woman and like living in a place where you're like constantly anticipating maybe a period is coming. And so you want to wear panty liners so you don't have like a public accident. It's embarrassing. I mean, is it embarrassing? Probably not. We're all women. I mean, I'm in a place where I'm adult and mature enough to be like, okay, yeah, I got my period, no big deal. But society is stupid and whatever. That's my opinion. So like I always felt like I was anticipating my period, but it didn't always come. But then there were times where it would come and it was just like a random like gush of blood, and then that was it. But I did run into situations where like I was at work, I had to change, and people were like, why'd you change? Whatever. It's just whatever. It was just annoying. I didn't like it. And so fast forward. Oh no, sorry. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So before I took myself off the birth control, I was readdressing these fertility issues because I wanted to readdress my fibroids. So I have quite a bit of fibroids on my uterus. And by this time, I'm like, well, they're causing me discomfort. Like if I hold my pee for too long, it hurts. If I sit for too long, it hurts. If my pants are too tight, it hurts. Just like not like hurt, but just discomfort, like down in like my uterine area. And so I just wanted to address it with my doctor, thinking maybe I can get these fibroids removed. I can live a better quality of life, not be uncomfortable. So I started addressing it with her, and she actually found that my hormone levels were off during this time. So it's like, you know what? She's like, get off birth control for 3 months. You'll recheck your hormone levels. Let's see what they look like then. So I did that. I think I waited actually 4 months when I had taken myself off of the birth control, wanting to detox my body and figure out what's going on. So my hormone levels, I think, were actually worse than when I was on the birth control. So then she was like recommending that if my fibroids are really causing me some issues, like with like daily life basically, and like in discomfort, that I should consider like a hysterectomy. And I was like, whoa. For me, that's very extreme. Even if my fibroids were causing me discomfort, I would not want to have a hysterectomy. Like I would just manage my way through it. It's just very extreme to remove your uterus. But they also wanted to wait until I got past childbearing age or had kids. But now since like I was facing these issues, they were wanting me to like, okay, now we want you to go see a reproductive doctor. Find out if you're even able to hold kids or have kids. And if not, then maybe consider removing your uterus. What? That was like too much for me. Too much. Very extreme, I felt like. Decided against it. I ended up going like a few more months. And so I just started recently, like I think like 9 months, readdressing it all again. I kind of had like some things going on, like personally with my mom, like she was having some health issues. But now that she's like more stable, in a stabilized place and doing well, now I feel like I can focus on myself again and focus on my health and my body. Also, in those 2 years that I came off the birth control, I gained like 40 pounds. And I mean like this. Like it, and I blamed it then on COVID, like during that COVID period, because activity levels changed. Well, not significantly, but I wasn't as active as I was before. So there wasn't like a heck of a lot to do. But like daily, like activity didn't change. I was working the same, probably working even more actually, but I just chucked it up to like stress and COVID and, eating a lot of like sugary foods and snacks. But along with the weight gain that I was experiencing, like I was feeling like emotionally not like upset, but just not the same. Okay, so now we're talking in terms of the physical part or the emotion part. So my body didn't feel And it's hard to put into words, but I remember talking to my boyfriend about it and telling him how I physically didn't feel like myself. Like I wasn't sad or depressed, but I didn't feel feminine. I didn't feel, because I'm a very feminine girl. So I didn't feel feminine. Like my skin texture was changing. Like I was losing volume in my lips. Like I just, overall, I felt pretty masculine. And that was because like I felt like my appearance was masculine, because I was like gaining weight. I was getting boxy. My lips were like losing volume. My skin felt more rough and I was getting some wrinkles. And he's like, well, maybe it's just like, you're getting older. Your body's changing. And I knew, like, I was like, no, like something's off. Like my hormones have to be off. Like I don't feel like myself. And even until like most recently, when I like addressed it, when I was talking about my mouth not feeling like myself, it's just, I just had so many points where now that I look back on it, and I should have addressed these things with the doctor sooner. I mean, but here I am. I'm doing it now. So my hormone levels, we'll go to the doctor again to just kind of check everything out, go to the women's doctor, like a gynecologist, get my pap smear done, and just readdress everything again and figure out what's going on with my fibroids. Can I get them removed without removing my uterus? Just kind of readdressing everything again. And now, I'm not on birth control. So, like, talking to my doctor again and addressing these issues and mentioning like my FSH levels that were elevated. It was like a 58 in January of this year, of 2022. And it was just kind of like wonky because that's obviously not normal for me. And my age, so she drew them again and they were abnormal. I think my FSH level was at 25, and it was showing like that's like the level for like a menopausal person, like someone menopausal, postmenopausal. And so FSH is like a follicle stimulating hormone. And then also like my estrogen and stuff she took, my labs were like not good. And so that combined with all my symptoms of everything going on, that's when I got the diagnosis of, the suspected diagnosis of the POI, the ovarian insufficiency. So then she did like a repeat of the labs, like I think it was like 6 weeks, which they recommend, that you repeat them just to make sure that it wasn't like a fluke or whatever. I don't know. So she repeated it. They were the same. So she was confirming that diagnosis. And then I got recommended to an endocrinologist to rule out any other like type of hormone imbalance that could be reversible with a medication, or that would explain why my body labs were funky. So like endocrinologist is like a hormone, I guess, or endocrine doctor. So I went there, had some labs checked. Everything was within normal range, with the exception of like my vitamin D levels were low, which is consistent with like the primary like ovarian insufficiency, because with that disease you have a greater risk of osteoporosis and like cardiac disease, because your body's like not producing hormones to protect those areas, and also dementia. Great. So it's kind of like consistent, which sucks. It sucks because I was like hoping that it would be like something. A moment. Okay, just got some tissue. Just getting kind of like emotional talking about everything, obviously. So I was like really hoping that it wasn't gonna be like this like POI. I was hoping it would be something simple or something that can be corrected. And that something was just off. But it's like facing and knowing like that I'm 35, and even if I wanted kids, like if I really wanted kids and I was there at that point in my life, that it's something that I would have to have like a medical intervention with, in terms of like an IVF, or yeah, just that IVF. That's what my doctor was saying. If I want to have kids, I need to do IVF, and like a donor egg, so it wouldn't even be like a my egg, because my body's not producing any. It's just kind of really like having something taken away from you that you don't have, or that you don't, the option is just no longer there. It's kind of like really kind of hard for me facing, especially like knowing how badly I wanted kids when I was younger, and knowing now that if I address these issues like at that point in my life, I would have possibly, like, even before 25, like had egg retrievals and freeze my eggs, so that way if I wanted a kid in the future, it would be like a part of me, or with one of my eggs. But just knowing like that option is not there for me, it's really, it's emotionally hard to deal with. Like, looking online and trying to find information, like, I'm finding that there's not a lot of people that are openly talking about it, that I can find anyway. I think I came across somebody's page where she talked about it, and she mentioned even the same thing, that there's not a lot of open discussion about POI. And I don't know if it's just because it's a very touchy subject, and it's kind of puts you in a very emotional place. Even me here talking about it with no one in the house. I just have my dogs, I don't have anybody over, like my boyfriend's at work. I don't have anybody here at the house with me. But I wanted to film this by myself, so I can give myself the opportunity to really feel what I was feeling without worry of judgment or somebody else's input. Or, not that I can't be vulnerable. I feel like I still need to give myself time, and maybe I need to speak with like somebody, like professionally, to give myself time to kind of figure out. Maybe I need to like speak with somebody, which I'll probably look into, just to kind of be able to give myself time to come to terms with it, and I guess to grieve, like, I don't know, like children I never had. I know it sounds really silly, but I guess until you're like dealing with something, you really don't understand it. So that's it. So I'm hoping, like, here in the future, to kind of be able to like maybe touch base on this. I'm hoping to kind of touch base on this subject every so often, and kind of address it, and how I'm dealing with it, or what it is that I'm doing to like address it, or what my experience is like with it moving forward, or knowing that this is it, or what changes that I'm making in my life. So now, this channel, I'm hoping to kind of just, for this to be like an outlet for me to get things out and just talk about things, and kind of just like, I don't know, like maybe timestamps, videos, memories, I don't know, just to kind of document, I guess, my journey through it, my journey with POI, because this is now me, part of my identity, part of who I am. So if you've made it this far in the video, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for watching me go through some emotions. If you are my coworker and you're seeing this and you want to have like a legitimate like one-on-one conversation and talk about it with me, like maybe you guys are going through something or I'm going through this and you just want to be there for me or be a part of it or talk to me about it, totally open. This is for coworkers or family or friends. But if you're doing it like and coming from a place of just wanting to be in the know or wanting to ask prying invasive questions, that's probably like I'll probably shut down the conversation and not participate in that. Hopefully I don't run into any like sort of uncomfortable conversations, which I may at some point. I mean, let's be real, like people still think it's appropriate to ask you when you're having kids or if you're having kids. This always blew my mind. It's not an appropriate question. If for anyone, for a healthy person, for a non-healthy person, for a married person, for a single person, it's just not an appropriate question to ask anybody. If you're one of those people that ask people that, just don't. They shouldn't have to explain themselves or their decisions to anybody. You should just be there for the journey, and if that's a part of it, that's a part of it. If there's something going on that you know about, then be glad that you're part of that process. But don't be prying. It's not fun. I don't know. What else is there to say?